The heat shimmered off the asphalt, making the chrome on his Harley look like liquid silver. Rhino sat on the curb outside the dusty diner, a half-eaten burger forgotten in its wax paper wrapper beside him. The rumble of the highway was a familiar song, a low thrum that vibrated through the soles of his worn leather boots. He wasn't a man given to deep thoughts, but he enjoyed these moments of quiet. The sun on his back, the smell of grease and gasoline, the solitude. His club, the Iron Angels, valued two things above all: loyalty and the open road. Right now, he was just a man named Frank enjoying a break. A shadow fell over him. He didn't look up at first, assuming it was a stray dog or one of the local kids who were sometimes brave enough to ask about his bike. But the silence stretched. It was a different kind of silence. Heavy. He finally lifted his gaze. A little girl stood there, no older than 5. Her feet were bare, the soles smudged with dirt and grime. She wore a thin pink nightgown decorated with faded cartoon unicorns. Her blonde hair was a tangled mess, and her blue eyes were wide, vacant, like 2 pale moons in a porcelain face. She just stared at him, her small chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. Rhino softened his expression. He was a mountain of a man, covered in tattoos and leather, and he knew he could be intimidating. "Hey there, little bird," he said, his voice a low gravel. "You lost?" The girl didn't answer. She just kept staring, her gaze fixed on the snarling wolf patch on his vest. Her thumb was in her mouth, but she wasn't sucking on it. It was just there, a placeholder for a comfort she couldn't find. He tried again, gentler this time. "Is your mom or dad in the diner?" He gestured with his head. "I can help you find them." She finally pulled her thumb from her mouth. Her lips were pale. When she spoke, her voice was a tiny, fragile thing, barely a whisper against the highway's drone. "Mommy's in the freezer." The words hung in the thick, hot air. Rhino's blood went cold. It was the kind of thing a kid says, a game, a fantasy, hide and seek. But her eyes weren't playing. There was no glimmer of a joke, no hint of a childish fib. There was only a hollowed-out horror that didn't belong in the face of a child. He felt a switch flip inside him, a primal alarm that cut through the midday heat. He set his burger down, very slowly. "What was that, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice now stripped of its casual warmth. It was level, calm, and dangerously focused. She didn't repeat herself. She didn't need to. She just took a small step back, her tiny hand pointing a shaky finger down the road, toward a row of modest, sun-bleached houses a few blocks away. Her expression didn't change. It was a mask of shock, her mind stuck on a loop, replaying something terrible. Rhino rose to his full height, his knees cracking. The world narrowed to the small, barefoot girl and the chilling simplicity of her words. Freezer, the word echoed. A chest freezer in a garage, a walk-in at a commercial kitchen. It didn't matter. The look in her eyes told him everything. This wasn't a game. He pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over the number for his club's president, Sledge. Cops would ask questions, waste time. They'd see his leather vest and make assumptions. They wouldn't understand the urgency he felt radiating from this child like a fever. But Sledge would. Sledge would understand. Before he called, he knelt, getting on her level. "What's your name, little bird?" "Lily," she whispered. "Okay, Lily, my name's Rhino. I'm going to help you. Can you show me where you live?" She nodded, a tiny, jerky movement. She turned and started walking, her small, dirty feet padding softly on the hot pavement. He didn't hesitate. He left his bike, his lunch, everything. He just followed the little girl in the pink nightgown, a cold dread coiling in his gut. Every instinct he had, honed by years on the road where you learn to read a situation in a split second, was screaming that he was walking toward a nightmare. Have you ever had that feeling? A gut instinct so strong it feels like a physical force, telling you something is deeply wrong even when everything on the surface looks normal. It's a voice we often ignore. If you've ever felt it, let me know in the comments below. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button, because you won't want to miss how this unfolds. The walk was only 2 blocks, but it felt like miles. Lily didn't look back to see if he was following. She moved with a strange, somnambulistic certainty, a tiny ghost leading him toward her haunting. The neighborhood was quiet, sleepy in the afternoon sun. Lawns were neatly trimmed. Sprinklers hissed. A dog barked lazily from behind a fence. It was the picture of suburban peace, a place where nothing bad was supposed to happen. The contrast with the cold knot in Rhino's stomach was jarring. They stopped in front of a small pale blue house with white trim. It looked like every other house on the street, except for the details. A bright red tricycle was overturned in the grass, one wheel still spinning slowly. The curtains on the front windows were drawn tight, blocking out the daylight. A newspaper lay on the porch, still wrapped in its plastic sleeve. It felt still, too still. Lily stopped at the edge of the driveway and wouldn't go any further. She wrapped her arms around her own small body, shivering despite the heat. Rhino finally made the call. It was answered on the first ring. "Yeah." Sledge's voice was like grinding stone. "Prez, it's Rhino. I've got a situation." He kept his voice low, not wanting to scare the girl further. He explained what happened, the words coming out in short, clipped sentences. The girl. The diner. The 5 words that had changed his day. He described the house, the eerie quiet. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Sledge wasn't a man who wasted time with disbelief. He processed, analyzed, and acted. "Where are you?" Rhino gave him the address. "Don't go in. Don't call the cops. Not yet. I'm 5 minutes out. Hammer and Dice are with me. We'll be quiet." The line went dead. 5 minutes. Rhino leaned against a sun-warmed mailbox, creating a large patch of shade. He motioned for Lily to come stand in it. She crept over, staying just out of arm's reach, her eyes fixed on the front door of her house as if it were the mouth of a monster. "Is someone else in there, Lily?" he asked gently. She flinched, a full-body tremor. She gave a tiny shake of her head, then a nod, then another shake. Confusion and terror warred on her face. "He'll be back," she whispered, so faintly he almost didn't hear it. "The monster, he gets his medicine." Medicine? The word sounded clinical, routine. It implied a schedule, a countdown. The monster would be back. Rhino's jaw tightened. He scanned the street. No cars were approaching. Not yet. He looked back at the house. Every drawn curtain felt like a closed eye, hiding a secret. He could almost feel the cold seeping out from under the door. He was a biker, a man who had seen his share of ugly situations. But this was different. This was a violation of something sacred. The innocence of this child, the safety of a home. A low rumble grew in the distance, a sound as familiar to him as his own heartbeat. It wasn't the roar of a full club run. It was the controlled, synchronized purr of 3 Harleys moving with purpose. A moment later, they rounded the corner. Sledge was in the lead on his massive Road King, with Hammer and Dice flanking him. They parked silently a house down, cutting their engines and letting the bikes coast to a stop. Sledge swung his leg over his bike. He was shorter than Rhino, but twice as wide, a block of granite with a bald head and a beard that reached his chest. He didn't look at Rhino first. His eyes, sharp and intelligent, went straight to Lily. He saw the bare feet, the nightgown, the 1,000-yard stare. That was all the confirmation he needed. "Talk to me," he said to Rhino, his gaze now sweeping over the silent blue house. "She said her mom is in the freezer?" Rhino repeated. "Said a monster will be back. He went to get medicine." Hammer, a lanky man with knuckles like walnuts, walked the perimeter of the property, his eyes scanning for cameras, for broken windows, for any sign of entry or exit. Dice, younger and leaner, stayed by the bikes, his hand resting near his phone. A lookout. It was a well-oiled machine. Years of riding together had made their coordination seamless, instinctual. Sledge walked to the edge of the lawn, stopping where Lily had. He squatted down, wincing slightly. "Hey there, little lady," he said, his voice surprisingly soft. "We're friends of Rhino's. We're here to help your mommy." Lily looked at the 3 huge, leather-clad men, then back at the house. A single tear finally broke free and traced a clean path through the grime on her cheek. From inside the house, a sound. It was faint, almost imperceptible. A soft, rhythmic thump. 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 It sounded like a heartbeat, or someone trying to make one. All 4 men froze. Their eyes met over the little girl's head. Every doubt, every sliver of hope that this was some bizarre misunderstanding evaporated in the oppressive heat. The thumping was real. It was a desperate signal from inside that silent, blue tomb. Sledge stood up. His face was grim, a mask of cold fury. He looked at Rhino. How long until he gets his medicine and comes back? Rhino looked at Lily. We don't know. The thumping from inside stopped, replaced by a profound, terrifying silence. Had they run out of energy? Had they given up? Or had they heard the bikes? The question hung in the air, thick and suffocating. The quiet neighborhood no longer felt peaceful. It felt complicit, its silence a shroud over whatever horror was unfolding in that house. Sledge made a decision. There were two options, the right way and the fast way. The right way was calling 911. It involved waiting, it involved questions, procedure, and yellow tape. It involved giving the monster time to return. The fast way involved a boot, a door frame, and whatever consequences came after. Lily, Sledge said, his voice low and steady. He knelt again, making sure he had her full attention. Is the monster's car here? She shook her head. It's loud. He'll be back soon. That was the trigger. Soon. Not a vague threat, but an imminent one. Sledge looked at his men. He didn't need to say a word. Hammer was already walking toward the front porch. Dice had his phone out, but he wasn't dialing 911. He was setting a timer, a mental clock for how long they had. Rhino, Sledge commanded, take the girl. Go back to the bikes. Don't let her see this. He looked down at Lily. We're going to get your mommy now. You be brave for me, okay? Rhino scooped Lily up. She was light as a feather, all sharp angles and trembling limbs. She buried her face in the thick leather of his vest, her small hands gripping the wolf patch. He carried her away from the house, his back to the door, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He could feel her tiny body shaking against his. He didn't want her to hear the splintering of wood, the violation of her own front door. But you can't protect kids from everything. Sometimes the world breaks in, loud and violent. Hammer didn't hesitate. He wasn't a man built for finesse. He took 2 steps back from the front door, planted his foot, and threw his entire weight forward. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet street, a sharp crack of splintering wood, followed by the shuddering groan of a door frame giving way. The door flew open, slamming against the inside wall. The moment it opened, a wave of cold air washed out, even into the summer heat. It was unnatural. The air inside smelled sterile, clean, too clean, like bleach and fear. Sledge went in first, Hammer right behind him. The inside of the house was immaculate. The living room furniture was perfectly arranged, the pillows fluffed, not a speck of dust on the coffee table. It was the kind of clean that wasn't lived in. It was the clean of a crime scene, wiped of all evidence of life. The thumping had started again, weaker this time, but they could place it now. It was coming from below, the basement. They found the door to the basement in the kitchen. It was a heavy, solid wood door, but the terrifying part was the new hardware. A heavy-duty slide bolt and a thick industrial hasp had been screwed into the frame. A thick padlock hung from it, gleaming under the kitchen light. It was locked from the outside. "Oh, you son of a bitch!" Hammer growled, the sound low and visceral. This wasn't a punishment. This was a cage. There was no time to find a key. Hammer raised his boot again, but Sledge stopped him. "No, the frame is reinforced. Get the crowbar from my saddlebag. Dice, call it in now. Tell them it's a wellness check, possible domestic. Give them the address. Then get back here." Dice nodded, already dialing as he sprinted back toward the bikes. Sledge pressed his ear against the basement door. The thumping had stopped again, but he could hear something else. A faint, desperate scratching. Hammer returned a moment later, a long steel crowbar in his hand. "Let's do it," he said, his voice tight with controlled rage. Time dilated. The world slowed down to the squeal of metal against metal as Hammer jammed the tip of the crowbar between the hasp and the doorframe. The rasp of Sledge's leather jacket as he put his shoulder into it. The grunt of effort from both men. The wood around the screws began to groan, to splinter. Millimeter by millimeter, the steel plate pulled away from the frame. It was agonizingly slow. Every second felt like an eternity, filled with the imagined sound of a loud car pulling into the driveway. With a final, ear-splitting shriek of tortured metal, the hasp ripped free from the wood. The padlock fell to the floor with a heavy clang. Sledge threw the door open. A wave of intense, biting cold rolled up the stairs, carrying with it the smell of frozen food and something else. Despair. He descended into the darkness, Hammer right behind him, the flashlight from his phone cutting a sharp beam through the gloom. The basement was unfinished. Concrete floors, exposed pipes. In the far corner stood a large, commercial-grade walk-in freezer, the kind you see in a restaurant. Its heavy stainless steel door was shut, and its compressor hummed loudly, the source of the cold that had permeated the entire house. A small frosted window on the door was dark. Sledge rushed to the handle. It was a heavy latch, designed to seal tightly. He pulled, it didn't budge. He pulled again, his muscles straining. With a groaning pop, the vacuum seal broke, and the door swung open. Inside, huddled in the far corner, amidst boxes of frozen vegetables and meat, was a woman. She was wrapped in a thin blanket, her skin a shocking, waxy blue. Her lips were purple. Her eyes were barely open, clouded and unfocused. She was shaking violently, uncontrollably, her body consuming its last reserves of energy just to stay alive. It was her hand, wrapped in a dish towel for protection, that had been weakly banging against the interior release button, now dented from the effort. She looked up at the two massive figures silhouetted in the doorway, and a tiny broken sound escaped her lips. Not of fear, of relief. "Lily," she whispered, her voice a frozen rasp. "She's safe," Sledge said, his voice thick with an emotion he rarely showed. He and Hammer moved in, gently, carefully. They couldn't just pull her out. The sudden change in temperature could send her into cardiac arrest. Sledge stripped off his own leather jacket, the thick hide still warm from the sun, and draped it over her. Hammer was already on the phone with Dice, updating the 911 dispatcher. "Tell them we need paramedics. Severe hypothermia. Now." They worked together, their movements gentle, practiced. They were bikers, brawlers, men of the road. But in that moment, they were saviors. They carefully lifted the woman, Sarah, her body stiff and frighteningly light. As they carried her up the stairs and out of the cold, dark tomb, she began to sob. Not loud, hysterical cries, but silent, shuddering sobs of a soul that had given up all hope and then, impossibly, had it restored. As they emerged from the house into the blinding sunlight, Rhino saw them. He turned Lily's head away, shielding her from the sight of her mother's condition, but he couldn't shield her from the sound of the approaching sirens. They were close now, wailing a song of rescue. Dice met them on the lawn. "Ambulance is 2 minutes out. Cops are right behind them." They laid Sarah gently in the grass, cocooning her in their jackets. She was still shaking, but her eyes were clearer now, searching desperately. "My baby," she breathed. Rhino walked over, still holding Lily. He knelt down beside Sarah. "She's right here. She's okay." He turned Lily around. The little girl's eyes widened. "Mommy?" Sarah reached out a trembling, blue-tinged hand. Lily scrambled out of Rhino's arms and crawled into the circle of her mother's embrace. She buried her face in her mother's neck, and for the first time that day, Lily began to cry, her small body racked with all the fear she had been holding inside. Sarah held her own tears freezing on her cheeks, whispering, "It's okay, baby. It's okay. The angels found us." The rumble started then, a different kind of rumble. It wasn't 3 bikes, it was dozens. Word had spread through the club's network. An angel was in trouble, which meant a civilian was in trouble, which meant they were all in. They poured into the quiet suburban street, a river of chrome and black leather, parking their bikes with disciplined precision. They didn't make a scene. They simply formed a perimeter around the small blue house, a silent, intimidating wall of protection. Neighbors peeked out from behind their curtains, their quiet afternoon shattered. They saw not a gang, but an army of guardians. And just as the first police car turned the corner, another vehicle appeared at the far end of the street. A loud, obnoxious muscle car. It slowed as the driver took in the scene. The police, the ambulance, and nearly 200 bikers standing silent sentinel on his front lawn. The monster was home. The man who got out of the car, Trevor, was the opposite of the bikers. He wore pressed slacks and a polo shirt. His hair was perfectly coiffed. He looked clean, respectable. He saw the paramedics working on Sarah, saw Lily clinging to her, and his face contorted not with worry, but with rage. a controlled, icy fury. He started walking toward them, his stride full of arrogant ownership. He didn't get far. Sledge stepped forward to meet him, flanked by Hammer and Rhino. The three of them were a wall of muscle and leather. Trevor stopped, his eyes darting between them, a flicker of fear finally breaking through his composure. "This is my house. That's my family," he said, his voice tight. "What the hell is going on here?" Sledge didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The quiet menace in his words was more chilling than any shout. "Your family is safe now," he said. "From you." He took a step closer, forcing Trevor to take a step back. "You like putting things in boxes, don't you? Little cages. Let me tell you what's going to happen. These officers are going to put you in a box with bars. And if you ever get out, we'll be waiting, and the box we put you in will be much smaller." Trevor's face went pale. The bravado drained away, replaced by the rat-like cunning of a cornered coward. He looked past Sledge at the sea of grim-faced bikers watching him. There was no escape. He had built a private hell in that house, and now the gates had been kicked down by the last people on Earth he ever would have expected. The police officers approached, their hands resting on their sidearms, unsure of the scene before them. One of them, a sergeant with tired eyes, addressed Sledge. "Can someone tell me what's going on here?" Rhino stepped forward. He told them everything, his voice calm and clear. He told them about Lily, her bare feet, her 5 horrifying words. As the paramedics loaded Sarah into the ambulance, with Lily refusing to leave her side, the police put Trevor in handcuffs. He didn't resist. The fight was gone, extinguished by the silent judgment of 190 Iron Angels. The club didn't leave. They followed the ambulance to the hospital, their engines a low, protective growl. They didn't go inside. They just took over the parking lot, standing guard through the night. They brought coffee and food for the hospital staff. They were a silent, leather-clad vigil. When Sarah was admitted, a doctor came out to speak with Sledge. "She's severely hypothermic, but her core temperature is rising. She's going to make it," the doctor said, looking out at the army of bikers. "The little girl saved her life. And you got to her just in time. Another hour." He didn't need to finish the sentence. Rhino sat on a curb, the same way he had been at the diner. But the world was different now. The sun had set, and the air was cool. He thought about how his day had started, with a burger and the hum of the highway, and how it had ended. Here, a guardian outside a hospital, his life forever intertwined with a little girl in a pink nightgown and her resilient mother. He had just listened. That's all he did. He listened to a small voice that no one else could hear. Weeks turned into months. Trevor was denied bail, his history of abuse and the sheer cruelty of his actions painting a clear picture for the judge. He would be going away for a very long time. Sarah and Lily never went back to the little blue house. They couldn't. The Iron Angels made sure they didn't have to. The club, a fraternity of men often judged by their appearance, revealed their true nature. They were builders, electricians, plumbers, movers. They found Sarah a new apartment in a safe, secure building. They furnished it, pulling together donations from every member. They filled the fridge. They set up Lily's new room, painting it bright yellow and covering it in unicorn decals. Rhino became a permanent fixture in their lives. He wasn't Frank the biker anymore. He was Uncle Rhino. He taught Lily how to ride a bike. A pink one with training wheels, not a Harley. He came over for movie nights, his massive frame comically large on their small sofa, a bowl of popcorn balanced on his lap. He saw the light return to Sarah's eyes, saw the laughter come back to Lily's. The hollowed-out look was gone, replaced by the bright spark of a happy, safe child. The club's reputation in town changed. The story spread, whispered in diners and grocery stores. The intimidating bikers became the Iron Angels, the men who had answered a call for help when no one else did. Sledge, at Sarah's urging, started a foundation, Angels on Watch. It was a non-profit dedicated to providing emergency relocation and support for victims of domestic abuse. The first fundraiser, a town-wide barbecue hosted by the club, raised over $100,000. People came not just to donate, but to shake the hands of the men who had kicked down a door to save a life. It turns out a hero doesn't always wear a cape. Sometimes he wears a leather vest with a snarling wolf on the back. Courage comes in many forms, and it's often found in the most unexpected places. If you believe that, Give this video a like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Years drifted by like highway miles. The foundation grew, opening chapters in 3 different states. The story of the Iron Angels became a quiet legend, a testament to the power of a community that protects its own. Lily grew up. The trauma of that day was a scar, but it was not a wound that defined her. She was a bright, confident teenager who volunteered at the Foundation's youth center. She was fierce and compassionate, with her mother's resilience and, as Rhino often joked, Sledge's stubbornness. She never forgot the men who saved her. She called them her uncles, all 190 of them. Every year on the anniversary of the rescue, she and Sarah would host a dinner for the club. At one of these dinners, when Lily was 17, she stood up to make a toast. The clubhouse, usually a place of loud music and rough laughter, fell silent. "I don't remember much about that day," she began, her voice clear and strong. "But I remember being scared, and I remember a very big, very kind man who listened to me when I didn't have the words for what was wrong. I remember he called his family, and his family came." She looked around the room, at the sea of weathered faces, at Rhino, whose eyes were suspiciously shiny, at Sledge, who was watching her with immense pride. "You are my family," she said, raising her glass of soda. "They call you the Iron Angels, but I know what you really are. You're the 190 angels who moved when my mom and I were trapped in the dark. You brought us into the light, to my family." The room erupted in a roar of cheers and applause. Rhino stood up and pulled her into a bear hug, lifting her off the ground. He had followed a little girl with bare feet, and in doing so, had found a purpose far greater than the open road. He had found a family. From a distance, one might see only the surface, a group of rough men, a quiet woman, a vibrant young girl. But up close, the truth was richer. The story wasn't just about a rescue. It was about the ripples that spread from a single act of attention. Rhino's choice to listen, Sledge's choice to act, the club's choice to protect. Those choices saved 2 lives that day, but their legacy saved hundreds more through the Foundation. It changed the town's perception. It redefined what it meant to be a family, a protector, a hero. It all started with a whisper in the heat, a small voice speaking an impossible truth. It serves as a powerful reminder that sometimes the most important thing we can do is stop, listen to the world around us, and trust the instinct that tells us something is wrong. Heroes aren't born. They are made in the moments they choose to answer the call, no matter how small the voice that makes it.